I do have.
Didn't change until March.
This meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. It's one of those weird dates because the calendar didn't change until March. And so February 1661-62 is, by our way of looking at it, would be February of 1662. This is a time when the second generation of people were growing up and coming of their own in Providence. So it's not just the original founders anymore, but you have people that have been born and brought up there. And there are still newcomers coming in. And there's a controversy over what to do with these newcomers. Do they get the same amount of land as everybody else? Do they get the same amount of voting rights as everybody else? Do they get the same privileges as everybody else? As Sparkle said earlier to me, this is a never-ending story. When people are living in a place, it happens every time. What do you do with the new people when they come in? Are they going to be equals to you? Are they going to have the same kind of power? And Roger is extremely diplomatic in his letter here. It's a short letter, but it's beautifully written. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to pull it up on the screen right now. That's the wrong letter. Sorry. Let's get the right one for you. That's better. Hold on. This is Roger Williams' letter, okay, to the town of Providence. And in a moment, I'm going to read it to you, but it's in his best handwriting. If you've ever seen any of Roger Williams' letters, you know some of them, they look like chicken scratching going across the page. Some of them are done very quickly and probably not at a desk. This, Roger sat down, figured out what he was going to say, had his words fit the page that he had, and beautifully composed an argument to the town of Providence. His writing is full of the little flourishes that he always puts in there around the letters that he has. Words like children with a beautiful swoop to the D there. This, not a full signature down here, signed RW. But this is just an absolutely wonderful little letter. Now we're going to get rid of this one, and we're going to share something else. This will make it a lot easier for everybody, because this is the letter on the right-hand side and a transcription on the left-hand side. And as I go through reading this to you, then we can go and take and look at it and see what it really says. Each one of the lines in the transcription match a line in the letter itself. The punctuation is the same. The writing is the same. So it starts off, loving friends and neighbors. I have again considered on these papers and find many considerable things in both of them. My desire is that after a friendly debate of particulars, every man may sit down and rest in quiet with the final sentence and determination of the town. For all experience tells us that public peace and love is better than abundance of corn and cattle, etc. I have only one motion and petition, which I earnestly pray the town to lay to heart. As ever they look for a blessing from God on the town, on your families, on your corn and cattle, and your children after you, it is this: that after you have got over the black brook of some soul bondage yourselves, you tear not down the bridge after you by leaving no small pittance for distressed souls that come after us. What though the division or allotments be never so small, Yet ourselves know that some men's distress are such that a piece of dried crust and a dish of cold water is sweet, which if this town will give sincerely unto God, setting aside some little portions for other distressed souls to get bread on, you know who hath engaged his heavenly word for your reward and recompense. Yours, Roger Williams. Now we're going to break this down a little bit. Loving friends and neighbors. He starts it off. This is the salesman's compliment sandwich. You start off really nice. You say wonderful things. You argue in the middle, and then you end it up with something really nice. But I have again considered on these papers and find many considerable things in both of them. He's saying that both sides have put forth considerable arguments. There's one side that wants everybody to be able to get the same amount of land, the same amount of voter participation, the same rights that everybody else in the town does. And there are the ones that have been there for a while who are not pleased with this idea and say that the people that have been here are invested in this town and have much more to gain or to lose if that were to happen. Then he continues with this wonderful compliment sandwich, telling what he hopes what will happen after any decision is made. My desire is that after a friendly debate of particulars, every man may sit down and rest in quiet with the final sentence and determination of the town. For all experience tells us that public peace and love is better than abundance of corn and cattle, etc. He's already slanting the argument to his side. Even with this wonderful idea about everybody, after the decision is made, we all have to live together here to make some sort of place for ourselves to live. But know that living peacefully, even if you disagree with the decision, is better than having more corn and cattle, etc. Then he goes into his portion of the argument. I have one only motion and petition, which I earnestly pray the town to lay to heart. As ever they look for a blessing from God on the town, on your families, on your corn and cattle, and your children after you, it is this. He goes from being general to specific. On the town in general, but then on your families, your corn and cattle, and your children after you. That after you have got over the black brook of some soul bondage yourselves, you tear not down the bridge after you by leaving no small pittance for the distressed souls that may come after us. Roger founded the town of Providence to be a refuge for all who were distressed of conscience. But it's not just conscience here that he's talking about. Yes, there is this black brook of soul bondage that he talks about. But everyone has to contribute a small pittance for the distressed souls. They can't just come here and have their soul freedom. They have to be able to live. And even if you only allow these people a small allotment or division, and he hearkens back, yet ourselves know that some men's distress are such that a piece of dry crust and a dish of cold water is sweet. You don't have to give them everything. There are people that are so distressed out there that any sort of place that they can put their head down in peace is going to be wonderful. That a dry crust of bread and a dish of cold water would be enough for them. Which, if the town will give sincerely unto God, setting aside some little portions for other distressed souls to get bread on. Little portions of land is what he's talking about. You know who hath engaged his heavenly word for your reward and recompense. You know who. He's reminding them why they came here. Yours, Roger Williams. This is an amazing letter. How many times through our history as a country, the United States, have we looked on immigrants as being a problem? The next generation that's coming here, what are we going to do with them? Are we going to have to take care of them? Well, how did we all get here? At one point or another, unless you're a Native American, you were all immigrants. And there was somebody else here before you, leaving at least something to take care of the people that are coming here. That's what Roger's looking for here. And he says, if you want this town and your families and your corn and cattle and your children after you to be blessed, you can't tear down that bridge once you've gotten across it. This place for Roger was going to be a guide to everywhere else. Here was the possibility of having a place where no person was punished for what they believed, where people could come and make a home for themselves and not have to worry about these things. I'm going to go back to, let's see. Let's see if we can new share. Go back to the letter itself. Sometimes you get a clue from the letter itself about what Roger's thinking about. Talking to his loving friends and neighbors. My desire. The black brook of some soul bondage yourselves. Yours, Roger Williams. This is just an amazing little piece of work here. It states very concisely an argument that we have to take care of other people. There are other letters that he has when he writes about some individual person that needs the town to take care of them because they're either widowed or they've run out of money or they're in a desperate state. And he's trying to raise money to take care of these people. Here, this is a major argument that's going on in the town itself about what's going to happen to these newcomers. Are they going to be full citizens? Are they going to have full participation? Are they going to be able to get land the way that the first settlers did? This is Roger Williams in a nutshell. And it's one of the more powerful letters that he ever wrote, I think. There are some wonderful stories that he wrote in other letters, but this sums it up. He's the diplomat with a powerful argument that closes basically, you know the right thing to do. He's counting on his friends and neighbors to truly be loving friends and neighbors. And it's in taking care of the others that you get your reward and recompense.
John.
Yes.
We had an interesting question in the chat. Someone was asking, how old would Roger Williams have been at this time?
At this point, if we give him a date of birth of 1603, and this letter is 1662, he'd be 59, 60.
Yeah.
He's not a young man. He's at 60 years old. You've got to figure there are people born in the town shortly after the town was established and onward that are in their 20s and 30s that are becoming landowners as their parents die or parents move off and they've owned the land. You see the same thing throughout. The fact that the second generation comes in and it's just hard to get them to have the same. Well, the first generation went through tremendous hardship. 2 months crossing the ocean to get here. When it was here, there was nothing. They had to build everything from scratch. The second generation has had it a little bit easier. Now we're still 15 years away from King Philip's War. We're only a year away from getting our charter from King Charles II. That charter explicitly talks about the way that the government in this colony is going to be formed. But this is just to the people of Providence. And in 1662, we're talking maybe 300 or 400 people, tops. There's not that many people here.
You may have answered the next question, which is,
Okay.
was the argument only in Providence or all of Rhode Island plantations?
This is specifically about Providence. I'm not quite sure what's going down in Portsmouth or in Newport as far as land division goes. There are different arguments down in Newport, particularly about land division. People arguing that Roger never got the land from the Indians and that they did it so that they should be able to determine. There's a whole series of land arguments. Roger's in the middle of tremendous arguments with the people down at Patuxet. And they're forging documents, they're saying things, and eventually William Harris, shortly after this letter, another 4 or 5 years after this letter, gathers up a whole bunch of documentation to have Rhode Island's charter revoked and have a new document put together to join all these towns together. William Harris had all those papers with him, went on a voyage back over to England, and well, unfortunately, just off the coast of England, his ship was attacked by Barbary pirates. William Harris was captured and he was held as a galley slave for 3 years. The papers obviously disappeared. Eventually, they were able to gather enough money for a ransom for him, and they got him back to England, and about 3 or 4 days later, he died. So that movement never got to see the light of day, but there are constant efforts to change the way land is divided among people, to add new portions, to particularly down to Patuxet. They're constantly changing the boundaries, saying that the Native Americans had given them more land than they actually did. This is a constant thing that's going on, and Roger is constantly fighting it. And this is one of his more diplomatic ways of fighting these changes that are going on. And like I said at the beginning, saying that once we make a decision as a town, we've all got to live with it. All of us do. Even the people that you might be turning out that won't have the same rights that you do.
Okay, our next question is, why did Roger Williams spell cattle 2 different ways in the same letter?
Merriam-Webster is about another 200 years in the future. They spelt it the way they sounded it. And Roger will spell Narragansett 3 different ways in the same letter. He obviously spelt cattle 2 different ways. You know, it's phonetic, but it's not consistent phonetic. Spelling was more of an art form. Let's put it that way.
Okay, our next question. Do you feel Roger Williams' own experience as a newcomer was an inspiration for this letter?
Absolutely. And he's trying to remind the people that are there, whether they're the older citizens or the children of some of the first comers, of what they've been through to get this done. That all that they've accomplished, as small a town as Providence is, they're fishing, they're farming, they have orchards, they're getting by. They're not tremendously successful like Newport is with shipping. But here, of course, it's Roger's personal experience, but he's trying to bring that, to sharpen that memory that a lot of people there have for themselves. There's a lot of other people that were there from the very beginning as well, and that they seem to forget once they've got their portion. They seem to forget what it's like to not have anything. And yes, I absolutely think it's part of Roger's experience, but he's also trying to refresh the memories of the people that are there. I don't know about you, but my parents grew up during the Depression. Okay. And the lessons that they lived through, they tried to impart to me about a certain level of frugality when it came to certain things. That's what Roger's trying to do.
Okay, our next question is, how was the land divided among the early settlers? Would newcomers receive land outside their original boundaries, or would some original holdings be divided?
Well, for the original settlers that came in, they were all given, for the first few years, they were given 5-acre lots in what is called the Neck, or along what is now North and South Main Street. Starts at North and South Main Street and goes up the hill to Hope Street, which was the street at the back of the lots. You have some of the slope of the hill, some waterfront, some of the slope of the hill, and some of the flat land on top. In addition to that, land was divided up across the river out to the 7 Mile line in different acquisitions from the Narragansett. More parcels of land were added to the original settlement. And that was divided up as people could bear. As you know, some of the first comers would get more and more land that way, out in those extra lots for grazing cattle, for raising crops. And it's at this point that those extra divisions of land are being considered for some of these newcomers. Do they get some of this land? Do they have to pay in the same amount or more that the original people did to compensate the Native Americans for the land that they're using? Did that answer the question?
I believe so, but I'm sure if it didn't, they'll ask more for you to expand more.
Feel free.
Our next question is, who were the others coming into Providence who were such a concern?
Well, they're more English, at least. They're not dealing with a tremendous ethnic difference, if you would, but they're English people coming in here in all different levels of all different states. Some of them are fairly well off and they can buy right into the whole situation, but others aren't. There are people that are coming across the ocean because this is a chance to do something new. And they're coming to Providence in a lot of cases because this is the only place that people aren't going to be punished. You don't have a lot of Catholics coming here because the English didn't have an awful lot of Catholics. But you have people coming from all different places. Sometimes they're coming from other towns around here, and like Plymouth or Boston, and they're trying to get a start here. You've always got a population of, how does one put this correctly? Drifters, if you would, that aren't doing well in other towns and figure they'll just go on to the next town. Think about every Western movie you've ever seen. There's the guy going to the town and see what he can do. That's what they're dealing with. There are newcomers coming in over from England and trying to get their fresh start. And they encompass all different levels of the economy or economic levels and all different backgrounds, if you would. Because not everybody even leaving England was leaving England because they were having a good time. At this point in time also, a lot of people that came over indentured are maturing out of their indenture and they're looking for a place to live.
Interesting. Okay, our next question. Oh, it disappeared on me. 1 second. Was Warwick considered part of the new lands?
No, Warwick was a separate place. Patuxet was one thing, but Samuel Gorton Samuel Gorton was the founder, if you would, of originally Shawmut, later called Warwick, because of what the commissioner of the colonies was able to do for him. Sam Gorton went down there, and about 20 years before this letter was written in 1642, and just north of where Rocky Point is, just off of West Shore Road on Warwick Neck Avenue, just north of where Rocky Point is, Samuel Gorton set up a settlement along the road with the waterfront on one side and the land on the other. Unfortunately, his political stands were so outrageous that Massachusetts sent troops down there to arrest him. They did, and they brought him back to Boston and were holding him in hard confinement and heavy labor, as they said. Well, Samuel Gorton didn't like this, and he knew how to play the political game, so he wrote to the commissioner of the colonies saying Boston had no right to do this. He had gotten the land from the Narragansett himself. He was outside of the Massachusetts Bay's jurisdiction, and he had never been a subject of the Massachusetts Bay, but he was a subject of the king, and he demanded the king's justice. Commissioner of the colonies saw this as a wonderful argument and made sure that Massachusetts was forced to release him and restore him his goods and everything else that he needed. So Sam Gorton's down there in Warwick, dealing with the Native Americans in a different way than a lot of the other English are. As a matter of fact, the Narragansett had a different word for the people living in Warwick. Their word for most of the English was coatmen, the guys that wore coats. For the people living in Warwick, a lot of them were called Gortonites, after Samuel Gorton. They had a different kind of, Narragansett had a different kind of relationship with Samuel Gorton. And so did just about everybody else. Got into trouble in Plymouth, got into trouble in Portsmouth, was refused admission to Providence because he was so outrageous in his beliefs. Wrote books about his beliefs and everything else, which if you want to, you can look them up online. He was a character, called the justices in Plymouth and Portsmouth just asses. So you can see he wasn't your regular everyday English settler. Warwick was not part of the outside lands. Think about lands going out towards Newtoconkinut Hill, and to the west of the city today.
Okay. Our next question. How much, if anything, did Roger know about Clark and his progress towards receiving the charter when he wrote this letter?
Communication was hard. You've got the ocean to cross. To my knowledge, there wasn't an awful lot of back and forth while Clark was over there working on it. You had a huge political event just a couple of years before with the restoration of Charles II to the throne. The Commonwealth was over. Charles II was there. I'm not aware of direct communication back and forth, either between the colony or John Clark. There was some, but I'm not aware of anything between Roger and John Clark at this point.
Okay, well, that seems to be all the questions in the chat. Now, I would like to invite people, if you have a question, you can turn on your mic and ask.
Greg Lloyd here. Can you describe the outcome of his letter and his this dispute?
The best description of the outcome would be a compromise. Some people were admitted and allowed to pay in to get parcels of land that would work. And others, and I'm not sure what the criteria was, others were just left to fend for themselves, possibly go on to a new place. It really was a matter of those that could buy into the system were allowed to.
guessing no one else has any questions. No one's come off the mic or come onto the mic, I should say, or have typed any more questions into the chat. Oh, wait. How did Roger feel about that outcome?
Roger constantly fought for, how does one say this? For the underdogs, if you would. I think he sees himself in part as being one of those underdogs. But at the same time, he's constantly fighting to make sure that people are taken care of. As I mentioned before, there are other letters that we have, some of them written literally on scraps of paper to the town of Providence, a cut off corner of an old letter where he says, the town needs to take some actions now when things are not too bad to take care of this individual person. I believe his name was Shepherd. Or it's going to be a real big amount of money and time and effort if things go really bad for him. So he's asking the town to give some small amount to this man Shepherd, or else it's going to really cost the town a lot more. So he's constantly advocating for people throughout his whole life. Yeah, I mean, it's a little tiny scrap. I mean, the original letter to the town of Providence, like you saw this is a full-size sheet of paper. This one dealing with Mr. Shepherd is roughly 3 inches by 4 inches, and it's torn out of an old letter. You can see some of the writing on the back of it. And he just quickly scribbles out a note to the town of Providence. Paper was a dear commodity. Paper was very hard to come by. Remember, that's got to be brought across the ocean as well. They don't have any paper mills here.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know Roger was a clergyman. Was that a full-time occupation? Was that something he did on and then did farming or something else?
Sure. For him, being a preacher was not an occupation. Matter of fact, when he was in Plymouth, when he first came across the ocean, he said that a minister should not be paid. That makes you a mercenary. You should be a working member of the community, contribute that way, and then in addition, if you are called, become a minister. What that meant for Roger is he needed a job. He's not a farmer, he's not a fisherman. What Roger ended up doing was taking English goods from Plymouth and going out among the Native Americans and trading it with them. He comes from London, the heart of commerce in England. And he goes out among the Native American, the Wampanoag and the Narragansett, learns their language, talks to them, trades English goods with them, knives, kettles, hoes, axes, blankets, coats, earns his living primarily trading with the Native Americans. He had a really, really good income from doing that. Now, you've got to remember, they didn't have an awful lot of cash money over here on this side. So an income being plenty of food to eat and plenty to drink and plenty to take care of himself, his wife, and his 6 children. He had the trading post down at Cocomscusick. But he also, later in life, was a toll collector on a bridge in Providence. He would be a town clerk. There were various other things that he also did. But for him, to be paid as a minister would be turning into a mercenary.
Okay, we just had another question in the chat. I don't see Gorton as an original Providence landholder. When did he come to Rhode Island?
He was not an original Providence landowner. Gorton came originally to Plymouth about 1640. Didn't stay there very long. Went from Plymouth to Portsmouth. And from Portsmouth, he tried to come to Providence and tried to become a member of the town of Providence. And basically, he looked at the way Providence was run. And they had the original town agreement where they decide things by the majority vote of the people of the town, the landholders of the town. Well, Gorton looked at that and said, well, I'm as good a judge of what should be done for myself as any of you people are. I'm not going to pay any attention to that. That's one of the reasons they didn't want him in Providence. He was a rabble rouser. He was more of a firebrand than Roger was. One of the pieces that he wrote was denying the divinity of Christ. I mean, he's really a firebrand. And so he leaves, he goes down to Patuxet, across the river on the Warwick side of Patuxet, and gets into, at one point, a land dispute with the other Patuxet settlers across there, and they're firing muskets across the river at each other on a cattle dispute. So he decides after that he moves even further south down to the Shawmut Peninsula, which is Warwick Neck. And he was such a problem that Massachusetts Bay sent soldiers down there to get him. So he was, Samuel Gorton was unique. Let's put it that way. But he was not one of the original settlers of Providence.
Well, Rhode Island is known for its illustrious politicians. So if you could compare Samuel Gorton to any Rhode Island politician, is there anyone who's comparable to him?
Ooh, you know, it's going to be tough, but don't hang me for this, but how about Buddy? Okay, we're talking about somebody that bucked the system, thought about where he was and doing the best for that, but didn't always get everything right. Let's put it that way.
I think that's a fair assessment. Does anyone else have any questions? We invite you to come on the mic and ask.
I'm going to say, I see several Westcotts here. Are they descendants of Stukely? Excellent, excellent.
Do you have a story about Stukely?
No, I'm actually going to be talking to the family later on this year at a gathering. It's the 20th anniversary of the first time I spoke to the Westcott family. So 20 years ago I did it. I'll do it again this year.
Very cool. Very cool.
Once every 20 years is enough, though. Anyone else? Excellent, excellent.
Well,
then.
I think that's it, John.
That looks like it.
Yeah.
We only went a little bit over, but everybody seems to have been having fun.
I know.
I want to thank everybody for coming. This is absolutely a joy to do. Who knows? We may just have a question and answer type thing at some point in the future where it's not based on a letter or any particular point in Roger's history. Just come with your questions. We'll figure that one out, but we'll make sure everybody knows about that one.
Okay, well, good night, everyone. Thank you for attending. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.